Two-thirds of the British public are now calling for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to lose their royal titles, and with Prince William expected to one day become king, that possibility is no longer just speculation. Welcome to Royal Empire, your trusted source for royal insight and power dynamics behind the crown. There is a certain quiet tension that settles in just before everything changes, and that was the mood inside Buckingham Palace this morning. But the first shockwave did not come from the royal household. It came from California, where Prince Harry was reportedly seen boarding a private jet in a rush, looking like someone who suddenly realized that a chapter he thought was closed was about to reopen. Meghan was not with him. There were no cameras, no carefully staged images, just Harry alone, heading back toward the institution he once said he needed to escape. The reason is simple and serious. The palace has officially begun reviewing who is allowed to retain royal titles. And this time the language is firm, formal, and backed by constitutional process. This is not symbolic. Names, status, and long-term legacy are all now under examination. Public polling shows that a clear majority of people in the UK believe the Duke and Duchess of Sussex should no longer hold HR titles, and that sentiment is growing louder by the week. What has fueled this moment is not emotion but structure. The monarchy is undergoing a broader effort to streamline itself, focusing only on working members who actively represent the crown. That approach creates a cleaner, smaller institution and avoids accusations of personal targeting. If non-working royals lose formal status across the board, the decision looks administrative rather than personal, even though its impact would be deeply personal for Harry, Meghan, and their children. According to royal commentators, the expectation has long been that once Prince William becomes monarch, the rules would be applied consistently. No official role means no formal style, no matter how famous the name is. And public support for that position appears strong. This is where the story intensifies. The review did not appear overnight. It followed closed-door discussions between senior advisors and the king, with a clear focus on protecting the integrity of the monarchy in a modern media environment. One concern repeatedly raised is the use of royal identity as a commercial brand. From the palace perspective, titles are meant to represent service, not private enterprise. Once news of the review surfaced, reports suggest Harry reacted with urgency. He allegedly contacted palace officials immediately, seeking reassurance, only to be told that discussions would take place in person. That response alone sent a clear message. If this mattered, he needed to return. Harry's arrival in London was quiet and noticeably different from past royal returns. There were no public gestures of welcome, only a swift transfer to Clarence House. What followed, according to insiders, was not a family reunion, but a serious conversation about responsibility, boundaries, and consequence. Harry reportedly argued that he remains a prince by birth and by public perception. The response he received was blunt. One cannot reject the institution while continuing to benefit from its authority. That sentiment reportedly framed the entire discussion. When Prince William entered the conversation, the tone reportedly shifted even further. The message was clear. Freedom was granted, but freedom comes with limits. The most emotional moment allegedly came when Harry raised concerns about his children's future status. While sympathy may exist on a personal level, the palace position remains focused on consistency and long-term stability, not exception. Back in California, the atmosphere reportedly shifted just as dramatically. Meghan, who has often emphasized independence from royal structures, now faces the possibility that those same structures may fully detach from her family. Reports suggest she moved quickly to consult legal and media advisors, but this time the response from Hollywood was muted. Interest has cooled. Support is quieter. The brand that once dominated headlines no longer carries the same momentum. Public reaction has been swift and divided. In the UK, calls to remove the titles surged across social platforms, with many describing it as overdue. In the US, support appeared more scattered and less energized than in previous years. Even former defenders are beginning to question the balance between privacy claims and public storytelling. Then came the palace statement that shifted everything. Short, measured, and unmistakably firm. It confirmed that the title review is moving forward with cooperation between the Crown and Parliament, and that no individual is exempt. That single sentence reframed the entire narrative. This was no longer rumor. It was process. By morning, headlines across Britain reflected the same reality. Royal titles are no longer guaranteed. Timing matters. Choices matter. Actions have consequences. According to one palace aide, the monarchy does not act out of emotion. It acts to preserve itself. From that perspective, this is not punishment. It is correction. So now Harry is in London, Meghan remains in California, and the titles that once symbolized security suddenly feel uncertain. They wanted independence. They wanted control over their story. What they may now be learning is that independence also means letting go of the symbols they once criticized, yet continued to rely on. This is not about drama. It is about definition. What does it mean to be royal? And who gets to decide? The moment Harry walked back out of Clarence's house, one thing was clear. This was no longer a negotiation. This was a line being drawn. Because while the public was focused on whether titles would be removed, something far more significant was unfolding quietly behind palace walls. The monarchy was not just reviewing names on paper. It was redefining loyalty, responsibility, and what it means to belong to the institution in the modern era. Sources close to the palace say Harry left that meeting visibly shaken. Not angry, not defiant. Shaken. For the first time since stepping away from royal life, he was no longer speaking from a position of leverage. The deals were done. The interviews had aired. The stories had been told. And now the Crown was responding not with emotion, but with structure. The palace position was reportedly simple. Titles are not personal property. They are institutional roles. They exist to support the monarchy, not individual brands. And once that framework is applied consistently, sentiment becomes irrelevant. This is where the pressure begins to mount for Meghan. Because while Harry was facing reality in London, she was facing something entirely different in California. Silence. No rush of supportive statements. No coordinated media defense. No sudden wave of celebrity endorsements. Just a noticeable pause from an industry that once treated every Sussex headline as guaranteed attention. That silence speaks volumes. According to people familiar with the situation, Meghan believed the public conversation would once again turn in their favor. That the palace would hesitate. That public opinion would split loudly enough to stall the process. Instead, what she encountered was fatigue. Audiences were no longer reacting with outrage or passion. They were disengaging, and disengagement is far more dangerous than criticism. Streaming platforms are reportedly cautious. Publishing insiders are quieter. Media allies are less eager to take calls. Not because the story lacks drama, but because the narrative feels repetitive. Conflict without resolution eventually loses power. And the palace knows this better than anyone. Back in the UK, Prince William's role has become increasingly clear. This is not about sibling rivalry. This is about succession. William is preparing for a future where the monarchy must justify its existence through discipline, clarity, and restraint. Allowing royal titles to function as marketing tools undermines that entire mission. Insiders suggest William has been firm but consistent. No special treatment. No public arguments. No reactionary statements. Just process. That approach has earned him significant support among both palace staff and the public. And then there is the question everyone keeps asking quietly. What happens to the children? From a constitutional standpoint, children do not lose identity or opportunity. They lose formal association with an institution they are not part of. That distinction matters deeply to the monarchy, even if it sounds cold to the public. The palace believes clarity now prevents conflict later. Meanwhile, Harry is reportedly facing an internal conflict that goes beyond titles. Friends say he is beginning to understand that walking away from royal duty did not freeze time. The institution moved on. The family adapted. The world adjusted. And returning years later does not restore influence. This realization is not loud. It is heavy. As for Meghan, those close to her say frustration is growing. Not because of public criticism, but because the strategy that once worked is no longer effective. Carefully curated narratives are losing traction. Recycled talking points are being met with indifference. And without the authority of royal status, the spotlight feels harsher. The palace, on the other hand, remains unmoved. No leaks, no rebuttals, no emotional language. Just steady advancement through legal and constitutional channels. That is the true power shift. This is not a battle of personalities. It is an institution asserting its boundaries. And history shows that when the monarchy decides to act quietly, the outcome is usually final. So as speculation continues and opinions fly across social media, one thing remains certain. The crown is not chasing approval. It is enforcing definition. And whether Harry returns to California unchanged or transformed, one truth will follow him. Royal status is not something you take with you when you leave. It is something that exists only as long as you serve it. This is royal empire, and this story is moving exactly where it was always going.